What is up everyone, and welcome to a slightly different video to my usual content. Today we're going to be taking a close look at the Blue Snowball microphone. Now I know there's a lot of videos covering this mic, but I'm going to put my own spin on things and I'm going to introduce my knowledge of audio from other areas to talk about this mic. Now, I've owned this mic for a couple of years now, and I really think I should make a video on it, because if I had the choice, I would not be buying this microphone again. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a brilliant mic, and I do still recommend it as a great all-round, easy-to-use USB microphone, but since the time of purchase, I have moved on, and I do realise that I should have gone for something maybe slightly different. So today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a few different scenarios. I've got a new pop filter for this mic. I'm basically going to bring up a few different scenarios and record a couple of test audio clips with certain setups with this mic that I've used with and without a pop filter. So, without further ado, let's dive straight into the audio tests. Just to let you guys know, I am recording the video as you guys can see, and I will be using it at times just so you guys can see the distance of the microphone from, the mic to my face and everything. I'd also like to mention that I will be looking at this mic from a sort of Final Cut and video maker's perspective rather than an audio perspective. So all of the settings and stuff that I'll be referring to are within Final Cut Pro 10. Now, of course, they are pretty much the same as settings in any application, but Final Cut 10 can be a little sparse on details, especially when it comes to audio. And something that I will say is, talking about input gain, this microphone is set to input gain number 11, and I don't really know what it refers to, in decibels and whatnot. It's not really a very detailed gain structure kind of layout, but it works okay, and you get a decent level meter to be able to see if you're clipping or not. The only thing is, I find, is you can touch clipping really easily at sort of gain 12, but you're not clipping at all on 11, especially at this distance I am from the microphone now. But I just thought I'd mention those few points. This will not be from a fully audio perspective. It'll kind of be within Final Cut, if that makes any sense at all. So, like I said, let's get on to the first audio sample. Okay, so this is a pretty exciting little demo. This is me being pretty much the same distance away from the microphone, same gain level. However, I'm not using a pop filter, I'm not using any effects, any EQ, absolutely nothing. This is the dry signal that you get from the Blue Snowball. So yes, you may see a lot of big YouTubers or whatever use this microphone and they get fantastic results, but that doesn't mean that they're not using any processing. As you guys can hear, this is in desperate need of some processing. Definitely a high pass filter, definitely a pop filter, those two at the very least. I also slap compressors and God knows what on my Blue Snowball. I don't process it like crazy, but as you guys can hear, this raw audio is good quality, but it's certainly less than desirable. And you guys can see as well, with all of my B's and P's, it is clipping the microphone. If we take a look at the meter, I know you guys will be able to see that display. You can see that the level is kind of decent, but it is clipping every time I do a B or a P. So I'm sure we don't want to hear this example for any longer. This is totally raw, no effects, without a pop filter. This is what the Blue Snowball sounds like naturally. Ooh, and just to mention, this is on the first setting. I believe this is a cardioid pickup pattern. This is the only setting that we'll be looking at, because setting number 2 on the Blue Snowball is simply a pad, I believe, and setting number 3 is omnidirectional. So neither of those other two things interest me, especially for voiceover work. Omni stuff would be pretty cool if you're using this as a sort of ambient mic while video recording, but that's not what we're taking a look at. We're primarily talking about voiceovers. So that is it for this example. So this next example you're listening to is quite a bit different, and all I've done is added a pop filter. You guys can see that there is now a pop filter in the video frame, and that instantly eliminates clipping at this particular gain level. Now, you may still get a little bit of clipping here and there, especially if you get a bit closer to the mic, and if you start talking quite loudly, then it might clip, or it doesn't even clip there. But as you guys can hear, that is a massive improvement simply by adding a pop filter, and this is a really cheap sort of metal pop filter. I tend to find the fabric ones are a little bit nicer. Just by adding this pop filter, it sounds a whole lot better. Now, I do believe that yes, while it is sort of in fashion to have a lot of low end and a lot of high end in something like a radio voice or a voiceover, and it does sound very clean and it is a modern sound, I do believe there is too much low end being picked up by the Blue Snowball in general, considering how much low end we have to dial out. Now, even with this pop filter, I would still say that there is too much low end in my voice, or maybe not that there's too much, maybe it's just too much sub, so sort of like somewhere around 40 or 50 hertz, stuff that you really don't need for voiceovers and vocals in general. It's just too boomy, and if you've got a subwoofer, or if you've got speakers that can achieve quite low frequencies and can reproduce those frequencies, it is definitely too boomy and bassy. But maybe if you've got a pair of headphones or you've got some smaller speakers, this particular audio sample may be sounding absolutely fine to you guys. So I'll leave it up to your judgment, but this with a pop filter, in my opinion, is a massive improvement, but still not perfect. This next example you're hearing is starting to sound like a good voiceover sound, in my opinion. This is the same as the last one, Blue Snowball, pretty much raw and dry, pop filter, but we have added one effect from Final Cut Pro 10. And that effect is called Remove Low Frequencies. Now, there are two low frequency removing effects in the audio EQ section in Final Cut Pro 10, and that is less bass and remove low frequencies. Now, they may sound like the same thing, but bass refers to the audible frequencies, the actual bass, the musical tonality of your voice. That is what the less bass EQ effect is referring to. And the remove low frequencies one is almost like a high pass filter. You can adjust it. I have left this at pure stock settings just for reference purposes. I don't even tune it actually, I just use it. I tend to find the default settings are really good. They remove all of those unnecessary frequencies that I was talking about in the last clip, and it sounds a lot better, as you guys can hear. But there may still be too much low end. Now, believe it or not, I did not use a pop filter for my Hackintosh voiceover. I actually used remove low frequencies effect and less bass effect, and even by dragging the less bass on, it was still quite a well-rounded sound, but it may start to get into the realms of tinny sound. So let's take a listen with this exact setting, but by dragging that less bass EQ preset on as well. So as I've said, this is exactly the same as the last one, but it's also got the less bass effect. And you guys can hear now that we are starting to lose some of the nice natural warm bass that you get from the Blue Snowball. But one really cool thing is my voice is very clear. It is pretty clear. So if I had a choice, and I'm not even that familiar with using the pop filter yet, and I haven't found the ideal settings to use with my Blue Snowball with the introduction of a pop filter, but if I had the ideal choice, I would still use this less bass preset, but I would drag it right down just so I was using it to back up the remove low frequencies preset as a little bit of a high pass filter, maybe a gradual slope from around 100 hertz all the way down, just so that we've got nothing at around 40 and 50 hertz, none of that boomy rubbish. And of course then it helps you out if you sort of bang the desk or whatever and you get vibrations up the mic stand, then that really helps you out, because all of that low end stuff is pretty horrible and it's less noticeable in the mid-range and high end. But as you guys can hear, my voice is really well defined, it sounds pretty good, but we are still quite a long way from a nice sounding recording from this microphone, in my opinion. So now we're in the money. I have dragged on a crucial effect to use with the Blue Snowball, or pretty much any microphone. For that matter, and that is the compressor. Now, I leave the compressor settings pretty much default in Final Cut Pro 10 because I believe they are tuned from the factory with this application as sort of a voiceover compressor. Not 100% sure, but when you drag the compressor on, you guys can tell that the level of my voice is much better. Now, basically, if you guys don't know what a compressor is, it can be quite hard to explain, and even with my I tend to find that I've got a decent understanding of audio stuff, but even with my knowledge, it took me a couple of years to get used to what a compressor was really used for. It basically makes everything level. It's very handy in a live scenario, but also compressors can be quite musical and useful in the studio, and well, you need them in the studio as well for dynamic reasons. But I'm not going to delve into it in this video. If anyone wants any information, there are loads of videos out there on YouTube, and I do recommend taking a listen to some of the studio guys and, you know, delving into the realms of the audio guys to listen to what a compressor really does, because even though some of the people in our kind of tech circle are getting decent sounds out of these microphones, those audio guys with the home studios and stuff on YouTube really know what they're talking about, and they're very helpful videos. So this is the compressor added to the remove low frequencies and of course the pop filter, as you guys can see. So we are now actually sounding pretty good, and the rest is up to you guys. The rest is all about tuning the sound, and I will give a couple more examples, but what I am going to do is pause the video and have a listen back for myself and add the effects and see how everything is sounding. This is probably one of my favourite audio examples from the Blue Snowball. After hearing all of those others, one thing screams out at me as being essential when recording this microphone. Now, you guys may not be able to tell a difference straight away, but one huge thing that makes a massive difference is just slightly turning the microphone. Now, this mic has a cardioid pickup pattern like I've mentioned, so speaking slightly off center doesn't really make a difference. It's not hypercardioid or supercardioid, so it's got a full sort of heart-shaped polar pattern all the way around the cardioid capsule in this microphone. So when you speak a little bit into the side like I'm doing now, one really cool thing is it eliminates quite a lot of the pop. Now, the pop filter eliminates a lot of the pop, the P's and the B's, but of course some still gets through. You want to be able to hear those letters and you want to be able to hear low end from them. So the pop filter is doing its job, but you slightly need to turn the microphone just so that you're not blowing directly into it. And that is where the Blue Snowball really comes into its own. And I think this, with the less bass preset, as well as a compressor and all of that stuff, is no, sorry, not the less bass, the remove low frequencies. That is the ideal solution for this microphone. It just sounds good. It sounds natural, but at the same time, it's got that nice modern sound that I was discussing. It's not too boomy, but there's a nice lot of low end. Now, like I said, I recorded my main voiceovers for my Hackintosh series, which was the first series that I did a lot of voiceover in with the Blue Snowball. I recorded a lot of those videos without a pop filter. And what I did was turn the microphone quite a bit to the side, maybe even on more of the side than it is now, just so that I wasn't blowing and popping and being straight into the capsule itself, resulting in some of those awful noises that you can hear in some of the recordings. So this has been a really quick overview of the Blue Snowball. I wanted to give you guys a little example because I saw a couple of comments in regards to the audio. Some people like it, some people don't like it, and there's often debate with these cheaper USB microphones. Now, I discussed the microphone and my purchase choice very briefly at the beginning of the video. And what would I do differently now? Well, I would basically use an audio interface and not spend money on a proprietary USB microphone so that I wasn't locked into the Blue Snowball. On this setup at the moment, I've already spent money on the Blue Snowball, so I could have spent money on an interface, used an existing microphone like I have. I've got a couple of large diaphragm condenser microphones. I could have used one of those on my setup, and if I ever wanted to upgrade the microphone itself, I didn't have to upgrade the interface, or if I wanted to use two microphones at the same time for whatever reason, I could. If you buy a USB mic, you are totally tied in to that USB side of things, and that's one thing that I really don't like. But on the other hand, the Blue Snowball is simple, easy to use. It's no cable clutter. It's just one USB cable rather than having an audio interface with all these host of connections that are associated with doing that. And I like the design of it. It looks pretty cool. You know, some mornings I wake up and I wish I had a proper large diaphragm condenser microphone hanging in front of my desk. I think that would be really cool. And I think if voiceovers do become more of a thing on my channel, that's what I'll do. But for now, the Blue Snowball is pretty rock solid, and just with a little bit of a tickling of processing, not loads, but quite a bit, more than I'd usually do anyway, you can get it sounding really nice. So this is my ideal sound from the Blue Snowball. Why don't you guys comment down below, and if you guys have an ideal sound from the Blue Snowball, then please let me know. I know a lot of people own this microphone, but I feel that a lot of people need to use it a little better. Now, I do want to find an application that I can route my audio through from the Blue Snowball to allow me to add the same or similar effects for when I'm using this microphone with live streaming or whatever, because all of the problems that I have mentioned are also problems when I'm live streaming, because there is no EQ or whatever on Ustream. Not that I live stream that often, but it is a little bit of a thing that I want to think about. So I'm going to keep my eyes peeled for that. Maybe I can run it through Logic or whatever. I'll be using a more powerful system soon when my Hackintosh is on my main setup. But I'm starting to get into the realms of other things. This has been a Blue Snowball multi-scenario and multi-effect test. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I hope it's been beneficial and you've learned something. Of course, as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.